Welcome to today's session on mental health impact of violence against women. The learning objectives of today's session will be to understand the mental health impact of violence against women, to understand identification as well as assessment of various kinds of mental health difficulties that women experience as a result of their exposure to violence, and also to understand signs and symptoms of different kinds of psychological distress as well as disorders. So broadly, when we look at the consequences of violence against women, we distinguish them as physical consequences, sexual consequences, and also psychological consequences. So in terms of physical consequences, women can present with pain, with various kinds of injuries to different body parts. Sexual consequences are typically in the form of urinary tract infections, unsafe abortions, unwanted pregnancy, and so on. When we look at the psychological consequences, we could differentiate that into two. One is mental distress, which includes restlessness, being worried, having sleep disturbances, anxiety symptoms, and so on. And then we have psychological disorders or psychiatric disorders, which includes anxiety disorder, panic disorder, depressive disorder, and various kinds of other disorders that we'll talk about in greater detail as we go. So basically, on a mental health continuum, we understand women as being mentally healthy and mentally well. For people who start presenting with some amount of psychological distress because of certain stressful life events, we say that they could have mild or moderate levels of distress. And if this continues, and if this is also untreated, women typically develop various kinds of mental illnesses. So that's how we proceed from health and wellness on one side to disease and illness on the other end of the continuum. So broadly, when we look at psychiatric disorders or psychological issues, we tend to classify them into two broad categories. One is common mental health issues and the other is severe mental health issues. So firstly, looking at common mental health issues, these women typically have a range of physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral symptoms. We'll discuss what these mean in greater detail as we go. Now, these symptoms can affect their functioning, which could be again biological, their social functioning in relationships, and also how they function at work. They require short-term treatment and they require a lot of support from close family members and friends to be able to tide through this difficult phase. And this is typically in the form of anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, and sometimes people can have medically unexplained physical or somatic symptoms. When we look at severe mental health issues, again, they could present with a range of physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral symptoms, but these are experienced at a significantly higher intensity sometimes. This impairs their functioning to a great extent, much more than what you see in common mental health issues. These difficulties require immediate attention of mental health professionals. They may require more intensive treatment, longer-term treatment and management. And examples of severe mental health issues include schizophrenia, mood disorders like bipolar affective disorders, and so on. So let's look at some of the commonly occurring symptoms of common mental disorders. Firstly, we'll look at anxiety problems. So in terms of physical problems, people experience what we call autonomic hyperarousal symptoms. So these could be in the form of excessive sweating, palpitations, breathing difficulties, and so on. People can also have fatigue, sleep problems, muscle tension, and gastric problems. In terms of feelings, they could feel scared, they could feel apprehensive, And in terms of symptoms related to their thinking, they could have a number of worries on their mind. They can have difficulties in concentration, racing thoughts, feeling very restless mentally. They can also feel very lost. Now, some of the behavioral symptoms that you can easily observe in people with anxiety problems is a sense of restlessness. They're not able to sit still, they're not able to focus on tasks, they're not able to complete tasks that they started. They also socially withdraw. So, moving on to depressive symptoms, again, you can see that some of the symptoms overlap with anxiety disorders, and these could be in the form of women may experience fatigue, exhaustion, reduced appetite, increased or decreased sleep. They also have weight loss, headaches, body pain, and a sensation of increased heart rate. In terms of feeling symptoms, like the word depression suggests, they feel very sad, they have a low mood, sometimes they can also feel very irritable. In terms of thinking, they have a number of negative thoughts about themselves, about their future, about other people in their environment. They can also have difficulties in concentration. They feel forgetful. They have a low self esteem. They have reduced confidence, and they have sometimes thoughts of death, dying, as well as harming themselves or suicide. In terms of behavioral symptoms, they are found to have a lot of crying spells. They have decreased interaction with people around them, their own close family members and friends. They have poor self-care. They don't take care of themselves very well because of their depression. They don't have the same amount of interest in things that earlier would interest them. A little amount of work often causes them a lot of fatigue, so they prefer to remain inactive for a long period of time. They have anger outbursts that stem from irritability, that stems from the fact that they've become very sensitive, and they may engage in self-harm behaviors as well. The next condition is what we call somatization disorder. Again, symptoms can involve pain symptoms, and pain could affect different body parts like chest and arms, legs, joints, back, abdomen, and other areas. They could have neurological symptoms like headaches, movement disorders like tremulousness, having tremors, shakiness, weakness, dizziness, fainting, and so on. They can have digestive symptoms like having abdominal pain, difficulties with constipation, diarrhea, and so on. They could also present with sexual symptoms such as pain during sexual intercourse, pain during periods, and so on. There is a constant worry in these women about potential illness. They feel that they have something physically or medically wrong with them that has not been identified by the doctor. They have a strong feeling that medical evaluation and treatment have not been adequate. They would like more investigations, and they frequently feel that they need to get their bodily parameters examined for abnormalities. The next very important condition when we talk about violence is post-traumatic stress disorder. So as the name itself suggests, this is a lasting consequence of traumatic events that cause intense fear, helplessness, or even horror. So let's say a woman who's experienced partner violence where she's been very badly beaten up, or she's experienced sexual violence or rape. Now, we need to differentiate this from complex PTSD, which is experienced by people who have repeated traumatic events, such as, let's say, as a child, they encountered child sexual abuse. Growing up in their adolescence, there was another incident of sexual abuse that they experienced. from their partner. Subsequently, they get married and there is intimate partner violence, marital rape, and so on. So that constitutes complex PTSD. Now, what are the symptoms of PTSD? Now, these could include night terrors, nightmares, having a lot of flashbacks, feeling very fearful and scared, disturbed sleep. They typically tend to avoid situations or triggers that are related to violence. They have a lot of negative beliefs about oneself, and they're also very hyper-vigilant. We'll talk about some of these symptoms in greater detail. So, for instance, what is a flashback? Flashback is a distressing memory of the traumatic event. Now, these come into your mind although you don't want it. They are very intrusive in nature. So, a woman typically relives this traumatic experience as if it was happening again, as if it was happening now. And it takes over all the senses. So, your visual senses, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, everything gets involved in a flashback. What is hypervigilance? Hypervigilance is a state of heightened alertness where you're paying a lot of attention to some sensations, you're paying a lot of attention to certain behaviors that are aimed at preventing danger. A person is extremely sensitive to their environment. They could have physical symptoms such as breathing very quickly, having restlessness, increased heart rate, and so on. Their reflexes seem to be very quick and very jumpy. And emotionally, they are in a state of fear, panic, and they have a number of worries on their mind. Now, what are night terrors? It's important to look at this and nightmares in some detail. These are also known as sleep terrors. These occur during a night terror when a person appears to wake up in the middle of their sleep shouting or screaming. The content often is not remembered by the woman, but it causes a lot of unpleasantness because there's increased heart rate, there is warmth that is experienced like a hot flush, they're sweating, they end up kicking and thrashing around, when they sort of wake up from their dream. What is a nightmare? These are unpleasant dreams that are usually remembered upon waking, unlike the night terror. They start after the traumatic event and they follow the experience of trauma and sometimes involve the same elements that were involved in the traumatic event. Okay, they also have autonomic hyperarousal symptoms like increased heart rate, sweating, feeling fearful, and so on. Now, with that, we'll move on to the symptoms of severe mental disorders. Now, the symptoms of severe mental disorders, when we look at behavioral symptoms, we need to distinguish them from common mental disorders in that this could be experienced in a heightened sense. This could be more intense, this could be more frequent, this could be qualitatively very different from common mental disorders. So common mental disorders, certain symptoms are experienced quantitatively more, whereas in severe mental disorders, they could be qualitatively very different. So suddenly a person who's not very aggressive, not known to get very angry, has become extremely aggressive. There is a lot of disorganized behavior, like they're not mindful of what they are wearing or how they are conducting themselves in social situations. They are seen eating dirt and mud. They're talking to themselves. They are not taking care of their basic personal hygiene, which is all very surprising about this particular person. So you see a drastic or a radical change in the person when it comes to severe mental illnesses. So in terms of emotional symptoms, they have extreme mood changes. Sometimes they experience a high, sometimes they are very sad and depressed, and that's what is referred to as a low. They have difficulty in understanding and handling emotional experience. They are found to be laughing and smiling inappropriately without any reason, without any provocation. And sometimes they're also known to make very big and very ambitious, unrealistic kind of plans about their present and future. Now, in terms of thought-related symptoms, they are known to have a lot of false beliefs that people may be plotting against them, that they are a messenger of God, they have some kind of special powers to save the world, the planet, and so on. They have an inability to think very rationally or logically. They are found to be very suspicious. They don't trust anyone. They have a lot of disorganized thinking that we spoke about, and this also results in disorganized speech. So when they talk, they seem like they're not talking very relevantly to the question that is asked. They are saying things that are not connected at all to what is being spoken of. They have difficulty concentrating, and they also have certain strange experiences like hearing voices when nobody is really around them. Now, for these kind of common and severe mental health issues, what do we do? Common mental health issues can be taken care to some extent by the counselors. They can offer support to these people, and we'll discuss in later sessions about what the counselor can do to handle minor symptoms of anxiety, depression, somatization, and so on. But let's say when it goes beyond our ability to help these women, what can we do? When do we refer? So typically when there is self-harm or suicide, it is good to refer to a mental health professional. When the woman is so depressed that she is not able to function, she's not able to do her day-to-day activities, when the woman is experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, where the flashbacks, nightmares, or other symptoms of autonomic hyperarousal cannot be easily managed by just, let's say breathing exercises and so on, and they may require medication. Psychological distress sometimes continues despite counseling. So after a few sessions of counseling, you may find that there is little or no improvement in this woman. And so it may be useful to refer to a mental health professional. The lady has psychotic symptoms. Like we spoke about, unusual amount of suspiciousness, hearing voices, disorganized behavior, a lot of aggressive behavior, and so on. And difficulties are experienced at an individual level in their sleep, appetite, in terms of social relationships. They're not able to function at work, in their occupation, and so on. So in such cases, it's good for us to refer to a mental health professional. So a mental health professional could be a psychiatrist, a clinical psychologist, a psychiatric social worker, and sometimes even psychiatric nurses. Over and above that, we could also refer them to counselors, people, mental health professionals in the district mental health program, a primary care physician who may be able to do an initial evaluation and then refer to a mental health professional. How do we refer? So it's important to make sure that the transition from your OSC center to the person you're referring to is smooth. So it will be good for us to set up an appointment for the lady, call the mental health professional and brief them about the case, because you would have had, maybe one session or more than one session with the woman. You would have collected some information. It's good to pass that on to the person you're referring the lady to. It's good to make a referral letter where you briefly summarize the woman's difficulties. It's good to follow up after the referral and ensure that the lady got in touch with them and the lady was in fact evaluated. It's important to also give a feedback about this referral process to the lady herself. So we will take a break here for any questions.